Welcome to Airborne on 88.5 FM, WFCF, and staugustine.com, bringing interesting people from your world so you can stay dialed into your community and the folks who make it tick. I have a special guest with us on the couch here in the loft apartment, right here on Airborne. I want to welcome now, let me get this list right, so don't say a word yet. We've got the president of the Rotary Club of St. Augustine, past president of the Ancient City Roadrunners, current vice president of the Ancient City Roadrunners, and partner and CPA of Taylor, Wainio, and Neville accounting firm. Is that correct? Welcome,
That's
Todd
correct.
Neville. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing, Matt?
Good, good. You know, the reason I wanted to run down that line of accomplishments is because I asked you in, we've known each other for years now, and that you're a runner, and but you accomplished something recently that just kind of astounded me. And that is you ran the San Antonio Marathon. Nothing new for ToddNeville running marathons, but there were 24, if I read correctly, there were 24,000 contestants in the field that day, and you came in 12th. Todd, that's elite athlete material. What got into you? Tell us about the experience first of all.
The experience itself, it's interesting. Just say how I ended up running the San Antonio Marathon.
Please do.
Our running club, the Ancient City Roadrunners, we pick one marathon each year.
Right.
And the club itself, actually, they picked this one this fall. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons they picked it was because it was the inaugural rock and roll San Antonio Marathon. Mm-hmm. And for those that aren't familiar with marathoning, rock and roll is kind of a name brand.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It originally started at the Rock and Roll San Diego Marathon. And what they've done is then they've taken that name brand and they've put it in 10 or 12 other cities around the country. And what they do is they are just a marketing machine.
Right.
So it was actually the largest inaugural marathon in the world.
Wow.
Because they had 33,000 registered runners at the start,
of which 24,000 showed up.
24,000 showed up and raced.
Wow.
And you going into a race like I've raced some other really big ones. I've raced Chicago, right, Boston, New York, where there's 45,000.
Now those big ones you just ticked off right there, you have to qualify for those, don't you? To a certain degree, or?
Chicago, you don't have to qualify.
Okay, forgive me.
New York, most people don't think of it as a qualifying marathon, but it really is a qualifying marathon.
Right.
Boston's the one that everyone thinks of, oh, you have to qualify to run the Boston Marathon.
I see.
And that's one that a lot of people strive for, especially in the running community. The people in our running club, a lot of them set that as their goal. They want to run the Boston Marathon. Mm-hmm. And for example, someone under the age of 35 has to run 3 hours and 10 minutes.
I see.
Now, New York is technically a qualifier, but the qualification standards are so high that most people consider a lottery marathon, where you put your name in the hat and they random number generator selects your ticket and you get to go.
Wow.
Because on that one it's 248 just to show up as a qualified runner, so they only have maybe 300 or 400 qualified runners there.
Good gracious. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Todd Neville, who just completed the San Antonio Marathon. And what astonished me again was your finish. Top 12 out of 24,000 people. Now, you were telling us that the Ancient City Roadrunners chooses a race, and this was the one. First of all, a little digression about the Ancient City Roadrunners. One of the things I found so supportive and fascinating about that group is you guys, you groom people who have never tried it before.
And we had 23 people go from St. Augustine this year to San Antonio and run the marathon. And I believe there were probably 4 or 5 first-timers that we had go with us. And it's just great. I mean, we had one woman that ran, I believe, 3 hours and 46 minutes. And she works over at Flagler Hospital as a speech pathologist. We had another woman who works for Prosperity Bank. It was her first marathon. She ran 4:04.
Goodness.
And it's really neat. Obviously, last year we went to Chicago, and there was some coverage in the St. Augustine Record about that.
The heat?
There was the heat,
yeah.
But the Record did a story on Chief Operating Officer of St. Augustine, John Regan. And John ran his first marathon in Chicago and ran, I want to say his time was around 5 hours and 25 minutes. And this year, after a whole nother year of training, he went to San Antonio for his second marathon, and he ran 3 hours and 49 minutes.
Good
So
gracious.
he took about an hour and a half off his time, which that's just, when you're talking about progression of a new runner, I mean, he's a great example. He lost over 100 pounds.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, he accomplished that as well, even on that first time around, didn't he? And you've seen some transitions. I remember as a guest on a WFCF, a firefighter, wasn't it?
Chris Calkins.
Yeah.
Chris also, he's a paramedic.
That's right.
And he went to San Antonio with us. He ended up, I believe, 32nd overall.
Wow.
And he's one, we have a little joke in the club, one of our biggest losers. He lost roughly 80 pounds, I believe.
Good gracious.
And now he ran 2:47, so he's running about 6:15 miles.
Wow, wow. Well, like I said, when I saw your finish on the San Antonio, did it surprise you? I mean, obviously you prepare, and that's why we started out by my naming all the things that you do in the community and your accomplishments as well. I think it's safe to say if you're ending up 12th in a race like that, you're in the elite athlete category, and why aren't you doing this for a living?
There's a couple things that go into that. Number one, the gap between me and the guys that are actually in it for money, even though I was technically 2 spots out of money because 10th place was $1,000.
Wow.
So I was pretty close from a place standpoint.
Right.
Now from a time standpoint, it's a different ball game.
Really?
And I had the opportunity last year for the Donna Hicken Marathon. I had one of the elite Kenyans stay with me for 10 days.
Wow.
And I got to see his lifestyle and see what he does on a daily basis. And then I also followed him during the race. And what was really different between how I run a marathon and how those top guys run a marathon, although my time's pretty close, they are in it strictly for money.
Oh.
And what I mean by that is they'll go out and, for example, I was clipping 5:45, 5:45, 5:50, 5:45, 5:45.
You're consistent.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
They might finish 4 or 5 minutes ahead of me.
Right.
But they'll run 5:45, 5:45, 4:50, 5:10, 4:50,
wow.
5:45. And what they're doing is they all know each other.
Right.
And they're trying to beat each other that day.
I see.
And there were probably, I would say, of the Kenyans and Ethiopians that were in the rock and roll marathon with me, those guys, I would say probably 4 or 5 of them dropped out. Now that's still, I mean, I'm still top 20.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're in it for a different reason.
Yeah.
And if they're not going to finish in that money, they just stop and say, okay, I'll come back next weekend. For example, the guy that stayed with me, the Kenyan that stayed with me, he runs 3 marathons a month to make his money. And what he does is he lives in the United States for 4 months a year and races over 4 months. He'll race 12 to 15 marathons.
That's incredible.
Then he goes back to Kenya and he trains in very, very poor standards.
Wow.
A poor standard of living. He trains for 8 months and lives with his family and his 4 kids. And he comes over here and he usually, the average Kenyan makes about $10,000 a year.
Wow.
And he, in those 4 months, he'll make a good $25,000, $30,000 here and triple the average standard of living in Kenya.
Well, ToddNeville, thank you so much for coming in. It's always a pleasure. It's always, to me, it's fascinating. Again, not only from the physical, but also the mental and even spiritual aspect of what you guys do at the Ancient City Roadrunners. And I hope you can come share with us again.
Definitely. Thank you, Matt.
My pleasure. We've been speaking with ToddNeville, again, president of the Rotary Club of St. Augustine, vice president of the Ancient City Roadrunners, and partner with Taylor Wainio and Neville, CPA firm right here in St. Augustine. You've been airborne with Matt Jeffs on 88.5 FM and staugustine.com, bringing interesting people from your world so you can stay dialed into your community and the folks who make it tick. We'll see you next time.